Please enjoy the story James and Lyla by Unsinkable Ships. 01. Dear James, I saw you again today. You were standing by your girlfriend's locker, your hands shoved deep in your jean pockets, and you smiled at some of your teammates who passed you in the corridor, although the expression didn't quite reach your eyes. Your face was arranged into a look of resignation, but I could see the rigidity of your arms, the defeat in your shoulders. I paused awkwardly, lingering for a moment in the framed doorway, because it was like time had suddenly cleaved into before and after you, and all of the feelings that I'd spent months trying to forget came back anyway. Before, I would have drawn your gaze and whispered your name. But we didn't do that anymore. We'd stopped acknowledging each other, and my world had become cold and empty without you. You appeared a mystery to the rest of the girls at our high school, but by the end of year 9, I had you all figured out. I knew you, James. I knew you, and I knew your secrets, because every time you were there for me our touch would tell me what your words couldn't. And then, one day, it had become your kisses. That was when things had become really complicated. Because you were my best friend. I held my breath without meaning to today, because seeing you again, it made me remember. Seeing you waiting by her locker reminded me of all the years that I would find you waiting at my locker. All the years you'd grin, your great eyes staring down at me intensely, purposefully, like my face was all you could see. Now, you won't even look at me. Sincerely, Lyla. 02. Dear James, so we have ancient history together this semester. When I opened the classroom door and saw you sitting there in that same spot by the window, my heart broke 1,000 times. What would have once been my seat beside you was occupied, and the blonde-haired boy next to you was serving his purpose as a human barrier. It was almost like you were willing to take the chance that I might actually sit beside you, like I'd somehow been able to forget the words you'd spat venomously at me the last time we'd spoken. Don't ever come near me again, Lyla. Don't you dare. I listened to you that night. I respected what you wanted. I'd managed to avoid you since the start of year 12. We managed to pretend that we hadn't been inseparable all of high school. But this changed everything, James. Everything. And if you didn't feel it, too, I'd be surprised. Not only am I forced to walk past you down long corridors, I have to sit a row behind you every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday now. And when Mr. Dalton called out a roll and noticed that we weren't sitting together anymore, his brows furrowed. He looked as confused as I still felt. How did some best friends become such perfect strangers? That was what I'd like to know. How our newly acquired history could be just that. A thing of the past. Knowing the friendship that we'd worked so hard for could be over in a heartbeat. How mistakes had the potential to eclipse rationality. How they could sometimes lead to more messy feelings and regret. For the entire first period, I had to endure the agonizingly slow torture of having you only an arm's length away. It was the closest I'd been to you since last summer, and I had to remind myself of the reasons why things had ended between us, why you'd pushed me away. But when I had to see you still wearing that blue striped sweater that I got you for your 18th birthday, it was easy to focus on the wrong, then gone the blurry memories of that night and how happy you'd made me. I had to see the back of your head, your dark, wavy hair that curled just above your collar, and all I could think about was how soft it had felt whenever I had threaded my fingers through it. And it was kind of hard for me to concentrate when all I wanted to do was continue studying your profile, not the class reading. and the stubble that had started to spread across your jaw. But I also had to see you sit beside Renner, your new best friend, and watch you pass scribbled notes back and forth with him like we used to. You revoked me of that tight laughter that night, and to be honest, I can't say that I blame you. 03. Dear James, I was hoping your girlfriend wouldn't notice me in the library after school today, but she did. Her hazel eyes narrowed when she finally settled her gaze on me, and I had to fight the urge to look away. Wherever Marnie went, Tom tended to follow, and I was tired of being caught up in her best-kept secrets. Worse yet, I didn't want to be amongst all of the rumors that were constantly circulating around you and her. It was hard enough having to deal with your high-profile relationship, let alone the stomach-churning level of PDA that was permanently branded in my scope. So when she walked over to me and dropped into a crouch beside my desk, tension crackled in my nerves. I hadn't spoken to Marnie since that night, either. "Hey," she greeted. I know this whole thing is super awkward, and I know that I haven't made your life any easier, but I really wanted to come over and say thank you," she rushed on, and I was instantly uncomfortable. "It's okay, you don't have to." "No, I should have said it months ago, and I don't know why I didn't." "Well, that's not exactly true. I do know why. I've been a bitter bitch." Marnie let out a humorless laugh and tucked a wayward strand of black hair behind her ears. "I shouldn't have shut you out, Lyla, especially after everything you did for me that night. I know I put you in an impossible position, but I can't stand the idea of you walking around these halls and hating me. Maybe it's the hormones, or maybe it's just that I'm starting to realize how unfair I've been to you. How unfair we've both been to you." I blinked slowly, almost like I was in a fog. I could hardly believe what I was seeing, much less what I was hearing. Marnie, the supposed bane of my high school existence, had apologized to me. Marnie, the girl who'd be wide for your heart and got a whole lot more than she bargained for, wanted a ceasefire. She wanted to put everything in the past behind us, and I wanted nothing more. I really did. But I hesitated. Damn me straight to hell and back. Why? Why did I still expect things to change back to how they used to be between us, James? Why did I still feel like I was lost in the reality that we'd created now? Nothing will ever be the same again between us, and you're with Marnie, so why can't I stop picturing us watching Indiana Jones on your worn brown couch? Why do I still dream about staying up late with you to count the stars in the sky on the cloudless nights? Why can't I forget you? God, I'd do anything to forget what we had, James. I can't forget a once-in-a-lifetime friendship, your love, like that. I just can't. But I know that I have to at least try. I know that I need to move on. I need to stop thinking about you and wondering if our interactions will ever amount to more than the silent grimaces and awkward pauses. I need to stop hoping that, eventually, we might be able to fix what broke between us. Sincerely, Lyla. 04. Dear James, excuse me. Those were the first 2 words that you said to me in almost 5 months, and it took me a minute to process that you were actually speaking to me. Your voice was devoid of any emotion, and you kept your eyes trained straight ahead, focused on the table that you and your teammates would sit at most lunchtimes in the canteen. I glanced to the front of the line where a dark-haired girl had shuffled closer to load her tray up with a salad to go. I'd completely zoned out, blocking the walkway, and you were still standing there expectantly, waiting for me to move. Your gaze was stormy and broody and locked on mine. Those startling familiar grey eyes flickered with what looked like sadness, and a shiver crossed my skin. Coexisting in high school was painful enough, but not having you acknowledge my existence was my own personal kind of hell. But now we were having this weird staring standoff, and I was busy searching your features, trying to catch a glimpse of the guy I'd befriended all those years ago. The guy who I'd ultimately handed a piece of my heart to. Did you still look at me and see the girl you'd loved, James? The girl you'd promised your forever to? Did you even miss me anymore? Those words screamed in my head, and I almost whispered them, but Renner came to stand beside us, clapping you on your shoulder, and you drew your armor up again. Your face was expressionless, and you pulled your eyes away, turning your attention to him. Have you heard about the party at Ryan Newman's? Want to go? It was a dismissive cutoff, and it only reminded me that you were gone. That I should stop expecting to see something in you that I recognized. The old James had disappeared like he never even existed. I forced myself to take a step forward, and you and Renner passed me without delay. As per usual, you were walking away, and each time you did, that stupid ache formed in my chest. Sincerely, Lyla. 05. Dear James, I'm starting to think that Marnie must have this internal radar that goes off whenever I'm around, as if she programmed to automatically detect my presence when I'm within a 2-kilometer radius or something. Because when I closed my locker at the end of the day, she was already standing right there, leaning against the wall. She raised her dark eyebrows when I squeaked out my own surprise and jolted backward. She seemed to think that just because we'd bonded over our mutual interest in moving on from that night that we were suddenly friends now. And if someone had told me at the beginning of year 12 that Marnie Flores, the most popular girl in school, would want a semblance of friendship with me, I wouldn't have believed them. The idea of her and me being friends had been laughable, but for some reason, I could tell that she wanted to start over. I could tell that she wasn't the same person anymore. Life had a funny way of creating its own tests for everyone, and I couldn't say that I envied her. You never called me back yesterday, she greeted me without even a hello. I was sleeping, I said, slinging my messenger bag over my shoulder. The whole day. Her tone was incredulous. Come on, Lyla, you know that excuse only works for me. My gaze involuntarily wandered down, drifting over her distended belly, and it was the first time I'd actually let myself look. How is that? I mean, what's it like? Well, imagine the week before your period, and then imagine never actually getting your period, she explained, and I immediately struggled to suppress the grin that tugged on my lips. I'm pretty much just stuck in this emotional PMS bubble, like all the time. None of my jeans fit anymore, and all I want to do is eat, but then again, that's not really anything new. My ankles are swollen, and I swear to God, everyone here keeps staring at me like they've never seen a pregnant person before. Ugh. The list goes on. Do you want me to keep going? I chuckled. Wow. Why don't you tell me how you really feel? It's not all bad, she quickly amended. James tries to do sweet little things to cheer me up, and it usually works, but I know this is hard on him too. I can't see he's scared of what's to come. We both are. My stomach dived, and I had these horrible flashbacks, thinking of the days you and I would talk and dream about our future. The future we planned to spend together. And not only were you fulfilling those plans and wishes with someone else, I wasn't able to be there for you. I wasn't even part of your life anymore." Silence fell, and Marnie blinked slowly, paling a little. "Shit, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "No. It's fine. Really, I lied. Don't worry about it." She studied me in disbelief, but before she could reply, "You rounded the corner and stopped walking. You hadn't expected to see us together, much less talking and acting civil. I was sure it looked like your girlfriend and I were friends, and for a moment, I wanted that to be true. I wanted to show you that apologies could be enough and second chances were possible. I wanted to show you that you were the jerk who refused to stop blaming me for something that I was starting to forgive myself for. I wanted to show you that maybe I was starting to see you more and more for the person that had undermined our friendship. Not me." "What are you doing?" you asked Marnie, and something flared in your gaze. "Fear. Jealousy." I didn't know. "What does it look like?" "I'm talking to Lyla. We're just catching up, aren't we?" "Yeah," I found myself agreeing. "I didn't realize you guys were friends." Your throat bobbed as you swallowed, and the confusion that marked your statement had me feeling strangely satisfied. "Yes, James. Some of us are capable of extending an olive branch," I wanted to say. I glanced at Marnie, and she rolled her eyes. "You should go," I said, trying to ignore the hollowness that was twisting up my insides. "I'll meet you at the car, babe," you told her. In classic James style, you'd effectively rotated the knife deeper into my chest. "This is such bullshit." Marnie sighed when you were out of earshot again. "I swear, he's upping his asshole status to a whole new level. Like, what the hell is his deal? Some days his mood swings rival mine, and that's saying something, right? Don't worry, I'll talk to him. You don't deserve this, Lyla. You didn't deserve any of this. Please know that." I nodded absently, my mind zooming back to the second worst night of my life. The night you realized I'd been lying to you. The night you accused me of betraying you. The night you claimed that I had never been your best friend, because a best friend wouldn't have kept such a life-changing secret from you. But, even then, the worst night of my life was still the night I'd found Marnie crying inconsolably in an aisle at Chemist Warehouse during one of my shifts, tear soaking her pretty face, and I'd just known that everything was going to change. From that moment on, you were no longer mine. Not really. And you never would be again. I hadn't been wrong, either. Author's note. Hey guys. So that was the longest letter to date, but things are starting to unfold a little more now, and everything will continue to be explained in the following parts. But maybe you have your own theories about what happened between them, and what went down that night. Please do comment and vote if you're enjoying James and Lyla so far. I appreciate the support immensely and love hearing your thoughts. As always, much love to you all. Dedicated to Flight Club, thank you so much for your insightful and kind comments on every chapter. It means the world to me. Sincerely, Lit. 06. Dear James, he hasn't stopped staring at you since we got here, Grace said as she slid into the spot beside me on the booth at Gloria Jean's Coffees. I couldn't hide my frown. Who? Handing me my cookies and cream chiller, the pensive look passed her expression. James. Does. James. She said your name as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. As if I shouldn't have even needed to ask. As if the last 5 months had never happened between you and me. And for the first time, I let myself actually wonder what that might look like. what life with you by my side again would be like. We'd probably be thinking about university applications and making wishes on shooting stars that nothing would ever change. We'd also probably be on the phone to each other every night, whispering in the silence. And I'd probably still be listening to the sound of your breathing, waiting for it to even out, for you to fall asleep on the other end of the line. Okay, well, thanks for that riveting piece of information, I replied dryly, hating the way that my heart did a painful flip against my ribs. Grace glanced over her shoulder again, snorting a laugh. He's still staring, she murmured, her tone turning serious. Can you believe that? The freaking nerve of this guy. I mean, he ignores you for months and, what, now he can't keep his eyes off you. There was a pause, and her silvery gaze narrowed on me intently. Wait a minute. Did something happen? My brain snapped into overtime, considering all of the reasons why after nearly half a year of radio silence and averting your gaze, you were finally okay with letting yourself acknowledge me again, letting yourself see me and be reminded of a night I thought you never wanted to remember. Nope, I lied, dipping the plastic spoon into the melting drink. Not that I can't think of. Nice try. Her reply was quick and no nonsense, and I blinked back at my friend. I think the only person who's willing to believe that light is you. I didn't know how to respond to that because, as per usual, she was right. Who's the hottie sitting next to James, by the way? He's new this term, isn't he? Brenner, right? I resisted the urge to correct her to turn around, even though I was already halfway to doing that, and shrugged in a display of faint nonchalance. Stop trying to get me to look over at their table. It won't work. A small grin played around Grace's lips, and she knocked a strand of her almost white blonde hair out of her face. Okay, fine. I'll cut it out. Just as long as you promise me that whenever you're ready, you'll talk to me. You can't move on from someone if you refuse to talk about them in the past tense. God, if only she knew just how much time I was spending doing just that. After all, that was what these letters have slowly become. A lifeline. The way for me to say everything to you that you never gave me the chance to. The way for me to try and regain the tiny fragments of my heart that I've given to you over the years. The way for me to try to accept and understand why you aren't willing to forgive me. The way for me to find some semblance of closure. The way for me to say goodbye to you. Author's note. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the 6th letter of James and Lyla. Now that you've met Grace, that's pretty much all of the characters that will be in this story. Please don't forget to vote and comment if you enjoyed. From now on, I'm planning on dedicating each part to the person with the loveliest comment on the previous chapter. Thanks so much for reading. I really appreciate it. Sincerely, Lit. 07. Dear James. So apparently we both missed school yesterday, which is why I discovered approximately 10 minutes into our ancient history class that Mr. Dalton had partnered us up for the term project. For a teacher who claimed to be highly educated, clearly the genius god hadn't visited him that day. Pairing you and I up in a history class was both ironic and really stupid. We hadn't even managed to engage in a proper conversation since the summer before year 12, so how the hell could we work together, especially in out-of-class study sessions, for the next 8 weeks? I mean, I'd probably have to invite you over to my house fully knowing that Grams was going to give you the 3rd degree. Where have you been, son? Why don't you come over anymore? Why did you stop calling? Yeah, this was a very bad idea, I decided. That's because you're working with Lyla, Mr. Dalton had told you, his voice jerking me back to the present. And I brought my gaze over to where you stood. You had froze for a moment, your shoulders tensing under the dark hoodie you were wearing, and then you'd merely nodded. It was a gesture that defied fate. You were supposed to tell him no, James. That you'd sooner fail the subject than be my partner. But you didn't. You never said anything. Pretending that I hadn't overheard seemed like the best option at first, but then, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that while avoidance and denial were easier to latch onto, it almost never worked. It just wasn't enough to keep you from drowning. And it certainly wasn't enough to combat the nervous energy I felt, knowing that after you finally turned around, I'd either see the same cold, flinty stare or, worse yet, that look you used to give me. You know the one I'm talking about, don't you? That look that set my insides on fire. Like I was the center of your universe. Like you never wanted to know what missing me felt like. Like you knew the memory from our future. Like you were powerless to be anywhere but right beside me. So when your great eyes scanned the room to find me, I don't think I'd ever wanted to disappear so badly. Sincerely, Lyla. 08. Dear James, I don't know what I'd been expecting you to do when you sat in the seat to my left. Scowled at me. Smiled. I mean, I know you weren't actually going to smile at me, but I wasn't sure if I should rule that out yet. I was new to this whole pretend you hadn't broken my heart and all of our future plans game that we were playing. But what I hadn't expected was silence. The kind of silence that stretched into minutes, fraught with tension and everything left unspoken. I figured that you'd have something to say to me, seeing as you'd had such a long time to think about it. Nearly 6 months, actually. The silence set my teeth on edge because it spoke volumes. You didn't care enough to even acknowledge our past. Or maybe you did care, but either way, you still weren't willing to say it. To admit you overreacted. To admit you were wrong. To admit you were the one who, ultimately, gave up on us. And it didn't help when you lifted your gaze and those gunmetal gray eyes bored into my face, like no matter how hard I tried not to let you in, you still cracked me open. I couldn't hide from you. I couldn't not be vulnerable. The ache returned again, piercing my chest, and I tried to make my displeasure obvious, that I wasn't exactly happy about this, either. I like your hair this length, you said eventually, your eyes shifting from mine to the handout Mr. Dalton had given us. It's been months, James. Fucking months, and that's all I get. A comment about my hair. My voice collapsed to a whisper, cracking over the last part. Your dark brows pinched together as you contemplated my words. I think it's kind of fitting. I mean, you remember how crazy I was about your hair. Oh God. You were serious? Warmth curled into my belly at the memory from last summer. Of being pressed against your side and my legs tangled with yours. Feeling your hand slide around the nape of my neck, threading through my long, red hair. Have I ever told you how much I love your hair, Lyla? You'd said, your lips brushing the shell of my ear. When my eyes lose focus, it's like gazing into a fire. Only with you, I can't touch it, catch the flames between my fingers. Only you can make me feel like I'm not burning myself in the process. I remember, I breathed out. And when I took in the faraway expression you wore, I knew you were back in that room with me. I watched that memory as it played across your face, and there was something equally comforting and unsettling when you showed me, for just a moment, that you hadn't forgotten. Sincerely, Lyla. 09. James vertical line Lyla. Before you ask me in class tomorrow, it's still the same number. Who's this? It's James. Oh, right. Okay, thanks. If this isn't going to work out, I can't just ask Mr. Dalton to swap partners. It's not that. I don't mind being your partner. What is it then? I don't know. I just assumed that you would have deleted my number by now. Why? Because you've already deleted mine. 10. Dear James, I can't still remember the night I lost you. Even though you might claim it was 3 weeks later, it was the Saturday night I'd agreed to pick up an extra shift at the chemist warehouse I worked, ditching you at the last minute. I was still trying to save for my car back then. So sue me for being determined. As I've been restocking the shelves in one of the aisles, trying to talk myself out of sending you a text to apologize for choosing to work over our plans to marathon the Harry Potter series for the millionth time, I spotted Marnie. You'd called things off with her for me. It wasn't until she'd glanced over in my direction that I'd realized something was wrong. Horribly wrong. Marnie's eyes were red-rimmed and fresh tears eked out of them, spilling down her cheeks. She was crying silently, and my heart felt like it was being pulled to pieces seeing her like that. Seeing her so completely and utterly broken. I hadn't known it at the time, but walking over to her only moments later and asking her if she was okay, it was going to cost me everything. I hadn't known it at the time, either, just how much it was going to tear my world down around me when I noticed that the tiny box in her vice-like grip was actually a pregnancy test kit. Or when I remembered that you were the first guy she'd ever slept with, a detail you'd told me in the past which I desperately wished you hadn't. Because that meant if she was pregnant, it had to be yours, and there was no way I could be at peace with that knowledge. Marnie fell apart that night, and in the process, she broke me, too. She broke us. That was the moment I really lost you, James. Not when I agreed to keep her secret and let her tell you. Sincerely, Lyla. 11. Dear James, you came over tonight. You didn't even come inside, but in the few minutes that you were here everything shifted. You were standing on my veranda when I came downstairs, hands in your pockets, and you sent me that tortured, tired look of yours again. Something bad must have happened, otherwise you wouldn't have shown up on my doorstep. I knew that, but it didn't stop the strange butterfly sensation in my chest, like tiny moths were beating their wings behind my ribcage. After a few tense seconds, you took a step forward and whispered, "Lyla." I shivered at the softness in your voice, from hearing my name on your lips with such desperation, with such despair. What the hell was going on? "Hey," I said quietly, and I could see my breath cloud before me. The cool July air danced over my skin, and I hugged my dressing gown tighter, hoping this conversation would be over soon. "I'm such a dick," you murmured more to yourself than me. I blinked, thinking that I hadn't heard you right. "I never should have said any of that shit to you the night I found out Marnie was pregnant," you went on. "Not only did you not deserve it, it wasn't right. I know that. Fuck, I've known it this entire time. I've just been too much of a coward to come here and apologize." My brows flew up. "Did Marnie say something to you? Is that why?" "Marnie?" you echoed. "What? No. She hasn't said anything. This is me, Lyla. This is all me. I don't understand. I couldn't even summon up the happiness I thought I'd feel upon hearing you tell me you were sorry, that you never should have reacted the way that you did. You were standing there on my doorstep again, and yet all I felt was the old anger and resentment resurfacing. You couldn't just erase the past, and I refused to forget. Why now? Why not last summer? Why not every day in school since then? You've ignored me for months, Jay, and what? Now you think you can just come here and say some words and that'll fix everything? You fell silent, and as soon as your nickname had slipped out of my mouth I wanted to take it back. There was something entirely intimate about it, and it made me look vulnerable, and I was so sick of seeming like the pathetic ex-hookup who hadn't fully moved on. Do you know why I did that? Why I stopped talking to you? Looking at you. You exhaled harshly, edging closer, and the faint smell of alcohol clung to you. Holy shit. That's why you're here, I thought. You were buzzed. Because every goddamn time I did. Every time I do. It hurts. It hurts too much. Seeing your face, seeing the sadness in your eyes, knowing I put it there, it kills something inside me. I mean, if I just fucking manned up and told you how I felt before Marnie. Before. You trailed off, shaking your head. The implication was that you wished we'd gotten together earlier, that you wished you'd never slept with Marnie, and I had no idea how to respond to that. I think you should leave. Swallowing the surprise that had lodged in my throat, I tried to sound calm. You waited too long. You did what you accused me of. Yeah, I might have kept Marnie's secret for a few weeks, but you held that against me and you picked her over your best friend, and now you've just gotta deal with your choices, okay? You can't have us both. You're right, you said finally, breaking a hand through your hair. Shit. I shouldn't have come here. There was reluctance etched in your features when you started to back away, and then there was disappointment in your shadow profile when I let you. And I knew it. I just knew. Even if you woke up tomorrow morning and couldn't remember anything from the moment after you knocked on my door, I would. And the knowledge that you weren't indifferent, that losing me had broken something deep inside you too, had left me more confused and conflicted than I'd ever been. God, I was such an idiot. Sincerely, Lydia. 12. Dear James. He didn't. Grace greeted me without even a hello. Obviously she'd woken up to my sad, crying emoticons and numerous messages in our Facebook chat. And when she noticed my equally perplexed and annoyed expression, her jaw rooted itself to my bedroom floor. Oh my God, he really did. Suffice to say, Grace was pissed. Pissed was good. Her reaction meant that I didn't have to doubt and second-guess myself. Clearly you showing up here drunk and confessing your soul to me was completely unacceptable, and me telling you to leave was the right thing to do. But then why was there this lingering numbness? And why did it feel like I might have made a life-altering mistake? Yep, I grumbled, pulling the covers down so that she could burrow in beside me. It was a Saturday morning, and the unwritten rule was to never drag myself out of bed before lunch, even if there were more pressing matters, like doing my homework. I mean, that lit essay wasn't going to write itself. Or, in this case, trying to work out how to wipe my memory so that I didn't have to remember, and keep remembering, every word you'd said to me last night. Seeing your face, seeing the sadness in your eyes, knowing I put it there, it kills something inside me. My heart picked up a few extra beats as I recalled what you'd said to me for the 100th time, how you'd pierced me with one of your intense, heated stares. There was no forgetting our conversation, or the knowledge that you'd been upset and I'd turned you away. It just felt wrong somehow. Besides, there had to be a reason why you'd come over here to see me while you were buzzed. A damn concern flooded me. Grace nudged her knee into mine, watching me under a meaningful gaze. So, what now? I don't know, I answered, momentarily unsure. But I suppose I got what I needed. I got more than I thought I ever would from him. And what's that? She snorted, letting me know that she didn't think there was anything positive to find about you trying to make amends. Grace didn't believe you deserved a second chance, and to be honest, I didn't even like thinking about the possibility of having you back in my life again, but not in the way that I wanted. An apology, I argued softly. Even if he doesn't realize that he told me he was sorry, I know that he is. And that's more closure than some people ever get. After that, I made sure Grace wasn't going to breathe a word of it to anyone. The last thing I needed was Marnie finding out that you'd come here to see me, and more importantly, what you'd said. There were already so many